Hello everybody, Josh12 back here again with another video, and I'm here with another top 5 list. Yes, it's that time of the week again, so let's get into this week's top 5 list. Now, of course, last week I gave you my top 5 worst DC movie villains list. This week I give you the flip side to the coin, which is top 5 best DC movie villains. Now, of course, very similar to the last week, I do have a criteria in place, which is, of course, I'll not be choosing any DC villains within the DCEU, which, of course, includes films like Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Suicide Squad, and, of course, I'll not be choosing any DC villains outside of the movies, which, of course, includes the animated films and/or animated universes, and, of course, none of the TV shows, cartoons, video games, so on and so forth. And of course, I'll not be choosing more than one villain for each film, considering the fact that most superhero films, and especially DC ones, tend to use more than one villain within each film roster. But with that being said and done, as always, my top 5 lists are subjective. It's my personal list, my personal thoughts. So of course, in the comments section below, let me know what your personal list is of the top 5 best DC movie villains. With that being said and done, let's start off with this top 5. Starting up at number 5 has to go to Ozymandias from Watchmen. Now, when it comes down to it, Zack Snyder, it's become a trend, or the go-to thing, which is to shit on Zack Snyder, slam on Zack Snyder for his ridiculous and absurd approach to the DC cinematic universe. And even though I myself am not a big believer and or fan of Zack Snyder's interpretation of DC on film, I do admit that I really enjoyed his Watchmen film. As controversial and as much as people despise it, I actually enjoy the Watchmen film for what it is, and I'll be the first one to admit I do clearly see the definitive line in, of course, in quality. And of course, I do think that the graphic novel Alan Moore's original work of Watchmen is far superior, and no one could ever make it better than said graphic novel. It's the greatest graphic novel in history, and it's one of the best that you'll ever read, and I love it to death. But I also really enjoy what Zack Snyder did with the live-action interpretation of Watchmen, and the villain of Ozymandias that you later find out is the main villain of that said film is phenomenal. I mean, Matthew Good's performance is so incredible to listen to just key into. He is a perfect classic approach of a fallen hero, like a fallen angel, has come to the realization that the only way to save the world is kinda to destroy it. And granted, that is a very classic superhero trope. The way Matthew Good and Zack Snyder approach it in Watchmen is just phenomenal to watch. You enjoy what he says, and sometimes you almost buy into what he says, as absurd and monstrous as it sounds, as to destroy major cities around the world. It just makes sense that something like that would have to happen to take away the approach of a global catastrophe like a World War III. But with that being said and done, moving off of that, going to number 4 on this list has to go to Ra's al Ghul from Batman Begins. Now, Batman Begins gave us a lot and did a lot of great things. It updated the superhero genre. It brought Batman from death after the calamity that is Batman and Robin, and it gave us some awesome superhero villains, as well as made us care about the character of Bruce Wayne outside of the Batman costume. And Ra's al Ghul definitely defines the new trend, starting with Batman Begins moving forward, of a classic superhero villain, and especially a Batman villain, and how we use them in future films. And I love the fact that in Batman Begins, Bruce Wayne's character is stripped down into nothingness, and then he's brought back up by Ra's al Ghul, and then brought back down once he becomes Batman. We didn't get to see how Batman becomes Batman up until Batman Begins, and we got to see the character that gave him the resources to really become Batman, which was Ra's al Ghul's character. His plan, a lot like Ozymandias, is of course to destroy the world to save it, and in this cryptic, psychopathic way, it makes a lot of sense in the way he thinks. And Ra's al Ghul, the way Liam Neeson plays Ra's al Ghul, is just phenomenal. I mean, Liam Neeson, as it stands, is a phenomenal actor, but the way he approaches Ra's al Ghul is amazing and just a phenomenal challenge for everyone, which is to be a great hero and villain in one. He is a character that gives Bruce Wayne the ability to become Batman later on in the story of Batman Begins, and of course comes back to strip it all away from him and destroy him. And I love Batman Begins, and I love Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul, and he's just a phenomenal villain within all the phenomenal villains we do get in Batman Begins, let alone the entire Dark Knight trilogy. But with that being said, moving off of that and going to number 3 on this list has to go to Catwoman from Batman Returns. Yes, Catwoman is a phenomenal character and a phenomenal integral part within the Batman mythology and universe, and has been used in multiple medias and is just a perfect counterweight into the Batman verse and Batman character himself. And I don't feel like until it came to Batman Returns where it was truly used perfectly. Now granted, we all as superhero fans, and especially Batman fans, can look back and think at Tim Burton's Batman verse and think of all the mistakes and misuses and of course just idiotic choices that were used at the time within the superhero genre, especially with the character of Batman. But if there is something that I guess you can say Tim Burton did perfectly well, amongst other things, was of course his interpretations within specific villains, which is of course regarding origins, because that's a whole nother story and video, is of course Catwoman. Catwoman was really the first villain within the Batman franchise, or within any kind of medium outside of the comics, to really hit Batman on a sympathetic level. She was a real counterbalance of what Batman really stood for, especially within the previous Tim Burton film, and really is just the perfect flip side to the Caped Crusader. Overall, Michelle Pfeiffer's Selina Kyle is sexy, it's wonderful, it's faithful, and it's just a really great reinvention of the character, especially from what we've seen it and how it's been approached before within the Batman 60s show or even the comics, and really has become the standard moving forward within Catwoman's legacy. Michelle Pfeiffer kills it, and she is phenomenal. She is just the perfect definition of what Batman really shouldn't be, but tries to really border the line of. And she's also what really defines what a true villain and or anti-hero should be approached within the Batman verse. But with that being said and done, moving off that, going to number 2 on this list has to go to General Zod from Superman 2. Now, Superman 2 has a lot of things going for it, and a lot of problems that were going for it behind the scenes, especially with the director switch. But with that being said and done, moving back and looking back, you kind of see the major flaws of the superhero genre. And of course, as great as the Richard Donner verse and specific Christopher Reeve interpretation of Superman is, there's a lot of flaws and crazy, inaccurate things to look back on. But if there is anything great about that superhero and Superman verse, is the great performances within Christopher Reeve's Superman, but of course the main villain, which was Terrence Stamp as General Zod. Now, General Zod, granted, like a lot of characters in Superman's verse, like Lex Luthor especially, there has become better interpretations of and portrayals of that character moving forward. But if there is something to take away from Terrence Stamp, is the iconicness of General Zod, the first ever, at least in my personal opinion, DC movie supervillain on a global, universal scale, where you have a character that has the power of Superman and is using it against people. He is a true villain. His performance, Terrence Stamp performance, is over the top, but it needs to be that over the top and cheesy to be cool and menacing and awesome. He is power hungry. He is obsessed with making people kneel before him, and the catchphrases alone are just phenomenal within Terrence Stamp. I mean, kneel before Zod is the classic catchphrase to a DC movie villain. And without a catchphrase, I don't think most villains could exist, let alone one in a superhero franchise. But regarding any of that, Terrence Stamp, his ability to strip down Superman into nothingness and make him want to change his ways is just phenomenal. And the way Terrence Stamp delivers his ability, his power, is phenomenal, and the way General Zod just steals every single scene within that film, even from the great Christopher Reeve, is phenomenal within itself. But with that being said and done, moving off that and going before I reach number one, let's put out some honorable mentions. Let's get into some honorable mentions of amazing DC movie villains that are phenomenal and awesome to look at and watch, but just didn't get into this list. Now let's start off with Gene Hackman, Lex Luthor, Jack Nicholson as the Joker from Tim Burton's Batman '89, Two-Face from The Dark Knight, Danny DeVito as the Penguin in Batman Returns, Scarecrow from the Dark Knight trilogy, played by Cillian Murphy, Tom Hardy as Bane from The Dark Knight Rises, Carmine Falcone from Batman Begins, played by Tom Wilkinson, and of course Sal Maroni from The Dark Knight, and Anne Hathaway as Catwoman in Dark Knight Rises. But with that being said and done, moving off of all of that, let's get into my number one pick of the best DC movie villain. Now, of course, this might be cliche at this point, juncture, but regarding any of the haters or stupidity that has come down within DC, positive or negative, in the superhero discussion or debate, at least online, there is only one true, superior, and amazing arch nemesis within the superhero genre that defines a superhero villain within the movies, and that is, of course, Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight. Heath Ledger's Joker is basically the definition of what you do right as a movie villain. Movie villains, especially within the comic book genre, I feel like actors find the need to really go campy, over-the-top, cartoony, and very theatrical with the way they play and perform. You can look at the performances and actors of my top 5 worst list, and that's basically what actors tend to go for. However, Heath Ledger's Joker and the Chris Nolan interpretation of that character is basically what you do right. It's essentially going for the fences, taking the time to develop a character as much as you do your main hero and protagonist, and really defining what that character means. In The Dark Knight, Joker is not a super villain. He doesn't have superpowers. He's not a monster. He's not a creature. He's not an alien. He's not this over-the-top, campy cartoon character. He's a freaking anarchist. He's a he's a true clown prince of crime. He is a violent character. He's a fiend who truly doesn't want to destroy the world. He doesn't want to own Gotham. He doesn't want to get the chick. He wants to strip down Batman's ideology and show his true colors. That is the greatness of Dark Knight's Joker and Heath Ledger's portrayal of the character. There have been amazing portrayals of the Joker character before and maybe even after, depending on your personal preference. However, if there's one thing for me personally, and of course a lot of superhero fans and movie fans, is of course Heath Ledger's Joker. He truly defines and creates the bar of what most actors should strive towards when it comes to creating, developing, and portraying a movie villain within a comic book adaptation. Heath Ledger's Joker is truly breaking the mold, taking the comic book source, and just doing something original with it. And it's completely faithful where it needs to be, and just amazing and original and crazy for the cinematic interpretation it's going for. Heath Ledger's Joker is truly the best DC movie villain ever, before and after, and has truly, to this day, has stood the test of time, and is just completely phenomenal and eye-gougingly amazing to look at every scene within the film The Dark Knight. But with that being said and done, that's pretty much been my top 5 list of the top 5 best DC movie villains. Of course, there's a lot of DC movie villains, and of course a lot to come for, especially with the DCEU, so of course with future movies that will come out within the DCU, I will be making top 5 lists dedicated to them. But with that being said and done, this has been my top 5 list for the top 5 DC villains so far, which of course includes, once again, Heath Ledger's Joker, Terrence Stamp General Zod, Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul, and of course Matthew Good as Ozymandias. With that being said and done, hope you guys enjoyed. Comment below, let me know what your personal top 5 list is. And with that being said and done, shameless plug time. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Josh12. Subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already. And I hope you guys enjoyed. And this has been Josh12.